Hello, role-playing people, and in this episode we're taking a look at the Scourge's lore of the Firmament, their ability to see and act through the body of another, to scry on a subject over any distance, and to use evocations from afar. It's important to mention this body of lore is a faint reflection of the bond guardian angels once had with their human protégés. Before the fall, everything that had received the breath of life had a unique link to a celestial of the second house, and as a result, said celestial was instantly alerted if any of their protégés are in danger, so they could immediately rush to their side. This bond was shattered after the fall, after Michael's curse. Humans, who were now mortal, affected by illness, aging, and accidental harm, needed their guardians more than ever, and Scourges did their very best to keep them safe and healthy, but their repeated efforts proved ultimately futile, precisely as Michael had told them. What greater pain is there than watching powerlessly as those you love suffer? Without further rhetorical questions, let's read some evocations. Remote viewing. This evocation allows a Scourge to see through the eyes of one of her thralls. This form of viewing is strictly passive. The demon is merely a spectator along for the ride. System. Roll perception plus empathy. The Scourge may see through her thrall's eyes for a number of turns equal to the successes rolled. There is no range limitation for this evocation. Torment. When a monstrous demon uses this evocation, it causes blood vessels to burst in the mortal's eyes. When the demon breaks contact, the mortal must make a stamina roll with a difficulty equal to the Scourge's torment. If the roll fails, the thrall is blinded for a number of days equal to the total number of turns the evocation was in effect. If the roll botches, the thrall is blinded permanently. Alright, this is a very straightforward ability which allows the fallen to see through the eyes of a thrall. It's called remote viewing, and nowhere does it say the Scourge can hijack any other sense except sight, which, although understandable and in step with the lore, might be a little restrictive. Given that the evocation's duration is measured in mere turns, it's almost impossible to know exactly when to use it to gather a desired piece of information. I mean, according to the rules, a turn lasts anywhere between 3 seconds and 3 minutes, depending on the action taken, but a full day contains 1,440 minutes. That's a lot. Say a Scourge wants to use this evocation to see the face of the person who's been extorting their thrall repeatedly for money and favors. Even if the fallen knows a brief meeting between the thrall and the bully is going to take place on a certain day at some point during the afternoon, let's say, it's almost impossible to use this evocation with the necessary precision just at the right moment without being tipped off in real time via phone call, message, or invocation that the meeting has indeed begun and the thrall is looking their bully straight in the face. Thus, using this ability effectively is very difficult, even with the thrall's knowledge and collaboration, and becomes impossible without those things. Some Scourges might not want to let others know of some of their supernatural abilities, even if we're talking about their thralls. So why should they? That can be a huge liability. To avoid frustrating the players endlessly, forcing them to spam this evocation until they get the desired result, making it tedious and slowing down the entire session, storytellers might want to simply extend the duration to 1 scene per success, or allow more senses to be affected, which might also provide other types of valuable information. As written, though it's very cool, this evocation is just not that useful, especially since it can only be used on thralls. The Hight-Torment version is really nice, very visual and frightening. Just imagine talking to a friend when all of a sudden, for not a single good reason, Tears of blood start running down their cheeks and they whisper in shock. I can't see. I can't see, while they drop on all fours and hyperventilate as the panic overtakes them. My only regret is that even the Hight-Torment evocation can only be used on thralls, so as the Fallen's torment increases, they will inevitably hurt their own servants, but I really would have liked to have some incentive to use the Hight-Torment version intentionally, like we see for other lores and evocations. Maybe the Scourge can very briefly force itself behind the eyes of anyone within their line of sight, so the distance is limited, precisely for the purpose of blinding them temporarily, even if just for a couple of turns, as tears of blood obscure the target's vision. Overall, I think this evocation lacks the nuance and versatility that would have made it so much more meaningful for Scourge protagonists. Next dot. Scry. The Scourge must know one of the names of her intended subject or be able to hold one of the subject's possessions, car keys, an article of clothing, etc. The demon can observe the subject and her surroundings no matter how far away. System: Role perception plus empathy. The difficulty depends on the level of connection to the mortal subject. Using a mortal's name or a physical possession is difficulty 8. A demon's celestial name is difficulty 7. A true name is difficulty 6. The amount of detail gained depends on the number of successes rolled. One success provides only a visual image of the immediate area around the subject. 2 successes expand the visual sphere out from the subject to a distance in yards equal to the Scourge's faith score. 3 successes adds audio. The demon can hear the subject's voice, but no one else. 4 or more successes allow the Scourge to hear everything that occurs around the subject. This evocation lasts for a number of turns equal to your character's permanent faith score, or the connection can be broken voluntarily at any point. Torment. The weight of a monstrous demon's attention causes a severe headache in the subject, as well as feelings of mounting paranoia and aggression. The storyteller must make a willpower roll, difficulty 6, for the subject in each turn that she is observed. If a roll fails, the subject suffers a level of bashing damage and reacts with increasing anger and aggression towards the people around her, increasing the difficulty of all social rolls by 2 for the duration of the scene. If the roll botches, the subject gains a temporary derangement as well. This one is quite similar to Find the Faithful, the first dot of the Lore of Awakening, but Scry works over any distance, not just within a certain range. In addition, it works through possessions, whereas Find the Faithful requires knowing at least one of the target's names, which might not be an accessible piece of information. So, Scry is absolutely fantastic in this regard. This evocation is what makes Scourges top information gatherers who can easily compete with fiends. Missing persons cases solved within 1 turn, provided the target is still alive. And all that's needed to channel this evocation is a hair, a nail, a shred of clothing the target wore, a glass they drank out of, anything, any possession at all, a cigarette butt, a hypodermic needle, etc. This power is even more valuable since it cannot be tricked by cosmetic alterations. As long as the target leaves behind DNA, which absolutely counts as a possession, the Scourge can observe and track them even if said target completely changed their appearance in the meantime, maybe even their entire shape. And in this case, not only does this evocation reveal the target, but it also reveals the very fact that they have shape-changing abilities. So it is a smashing info-gathering tool. No one can hide from a Scourge for too long. The Hight-Torment version can be used offensively to hurt someone, to make them paranoid and aggressive, so used at the right time, this can completely ruin someone's image, maybe during a public speech, maybe during a very sensitive business negotiation. Overall, this ability is useful in a plethora of situations, and it's a very solid bargaining chip with the other houses. Something that makes Scourges indispensable to any court of the fallen. I absolutely love this evocation. Next dot. Mouth of the Damned. This evocation allows the Scourge to speak and act through the body of one of her thralls. This is more like a form of remote control than outright possession, though. The demon remains firmly ensconced in her host body and simply directs her will through the bond between herself and her thrall, and he may do so at any distance. System: role manipulation plus leadership. The number of successes determines how many of the thrall's dice you can roll for any given action during a turn. This dice pool cannot be greater than the maximum number of dice the thrall would normally get for an action. When your demon speaks through her thrall, voice, expressions, and mannerisms are the Scourges. The effects of this evocation last for a number of turns equal to your character's permanent faith score. Torment. Monstrous demons have few scruples about a thrall's faculties. An unfortunate mortal risks permanent brain damage when controlled. Each turn the demon performs an action with the mortal's body, the storyteller makes a stamina roll for the thrall. If the roll fails, the mortal loses 1 point from the relevant attribute permanently. If the demon uses the thrall only to speak, the storyteller makes a willpower roll instead. If the roll fails, the thrall loses 1 point of intelligence. Okay, now we're getting to the aspects of possession we've seen in horror movies, right? When you can clearly see something else is speaking and acting through the host, or in this case, the target of the evocation. The voice, expressions, and mannerisms are the Scourge's own, so that's very interesting to roleplay, very enjoyable for players who portray both their protagonists and their protagonists' thralls. Now, since the effects are no longer passive and the Fallen can do more than simply look through the eyes of the target, my question is the target aware of what's happening to them? Are they awake throughout the entire process, or do they black out while the demon briefly takes control? This isn't mentioned anywhere, but it can make a world of difference for Scourges who, again, might not want the thrall to know they're using the lore of the Firmament. Personally, I would give players that choice. Say, if you roll at least 3 successes, you can decide whether the thrall is awake while being controlled or remembers nothing of the experience, believing they simply passed out. And again, given that this power only lasts for a couple of turns and only works on thralls, it can't really be used for longer actions, only brief bursts of activity like attacking someone or communicating something very quickly or setting off an explosive. But I'm actually left wondering what distinct uses this evocation has, since communicating long range can easily be done through invocation when it comes to other fallen or thralls. And any misbehavior performed through the target's body, in this case a thrall, will directly affect their reputation and maybe cause them some problems with the law, which actually works to the Scourge's detriment. Other than taking control of the thrall just at the right moment, which again is very unlikely, to create some kind of accident or set off an explosive, killing the clueless servant in the process, I don't really see how this evocation can be used in a truly meaningful way that changes the game and really impacts the story. Now, if this ability could have been used on any mortal, yeah, that would have made things ridiculously interesting, as the Scourge might have murdered their adversaries with their own hands and made it look like a suicide, or might have used this tool, again, to ruin someone's reputation in a very public way, or perform a wide range of trickery and misdirection. So the offensive uses would have been much more prominent. Not to mention, Scourges might have used this power to frighten their mortal targets precisely into accepting a pact. Right? Give me your faith or I will kill you and your loved ones with your own hand. Right? Which is perfect for Hight-Torment Scourges. But it only works on those who have already made a pact, so... Next dot. Touch from afar. Scourges can use this evocation to direct their powers at a target outside their line of sight, as long as they know one of the target's names or possess an article of great personal attachment to the target, such as a treasured possession or a lock of hair. System. Spend 1 faith point and roll manipulation plus awareness. Your demon can affect targets as far away as 10 miles times the character's current faith pool. Then follow the system for performing whatever evocation your character uses, but the difficulty of the roll is determined by the amount of information she has on her target. If she only has the target's mundane name or a personal possession, the difficulty is 9. If the target is a demon and she has his celestial name, the difficulty is 8. If she has the target's true name, the difficulty is 7. If the demon targets one of her own thralls, the difficulty is reduced to 6. Area effect evocations are centered on the individual targeted. Torment. The searing focus of a monstrous demon's attention fills a subject with visions of horror and madness. When a Hight-Torment demon uses this evocation, the willpower roll is made for the target with a difficulty equal to the demon's torment. If the roll fails, the target gains a temporary derangement. If the roll botches, the derangement is permanent. These effects are in addition to the results of whatever evocation the Scourge directs at the target. Splendid evocation. Absolutely splendid. Precisely because this is a house whose abilities aren't limited by physical space, and this evocation really illustrates at least a fragment of their former glory. It works on any kind of target, mortal or supernatural, over a huge range, and both benevolent and offensive effects can be bestowed. Imagine a devourer, all torn up, down to their last faith point, bleeding to death in an alleyway after an ambush. The devourer barely manages to invoke their local scourge before passing out, but as we know, being invoked allows some degree of vision over the invoker. So the defender sees a fellow fallen in need, someone they know, dying in that alleyway, and in a matter of seconds, stops the bleeding and restores them, at least to the point that they can get to safety. Wonderful. Of course, this enables scourges to consistently and repeatedly harm those who displease them, hitting them with illness after illness after illness, or using whatever other offensive evocations they might know, which can absolutely drive the target mad, knowing that nowhere is safe and nothing can protect you from the wrath of the second house. So this is absolutely smashing, and I love it. Final dot. Many places at once. This evocation is similar to Mouth of the Damned, except that the Scourge is capable of speaking and acting through multiple thralls at the same time. System. The demon can affect a number of thralls equal to her wits score, though if she affects fewer targets than her total wits, she can also control her own body at the same time. Otherwise, the demon's body falls into a deep coma until the evocation expires. Spend 1 faith point and roll manipulation plus leadership. Success is achieved, form a dice pool to roll for each of the thralls under the character's control. In addition, the character may perform an evocation through one of the thralls under her control each turn, using her own dice pool. Multiple thralls can be controlled over a number of turns equal to your character's permanent faith score. Torment. Each turn the demon performs an action with a thrall's body, the storyteller makes a stamina roll for the mortal. If the roll fails, the subject loses 1 point of the relevant attribute permanently. If the demon uses the thrall only to speak, the storyteller makes a willpower roll instead. If the roll fails, the thrall loses 1 point of intelligence. Additionally, if a monstrous demon performs an evocation through the body of one of her thralls, the thrall gets a stamina roll with a difficulty equal to the demon's torment. If it fails, she suffers 1 level of lethal damage. Okay, it is at this point my intuition tells me this lore was probably intended for Earthbound originally, which would explain the limited effects and the fact that it functions predominantly through servants or thralls, as well as a lack of Hight-Torment effects which can be used on their own even at low torment ratings. Needless to say, in the hands of the storyteller for an antagonist Scourge, this power is amazing, especially given that lores can also be used through each thrall. I can already hear the perfectly synchronized choir of voices coming out of 4 or 5 mortals, all possessed by the same being and acting in perfect harmony towards destroying the protagonists. Lovely. No one can deny what awesome and memorable combat scenes this can lead to. But from the player and player character perspective, I ask myself, what conflict could be so serious and so grave that it makes a Scourge gather all of their thralls in the same place to act through all of them? For Earthbound, well, they might be able to use this evocation through their worshippers as well, of which they have many and they care very little about. But for minor fallen who rely on the faith of each mortal they made a pact with, why would they take such a huge risk? I mean, if I could get my faith from someone who is nowhere near me and lives in a completely different city or even country, that would be the best. And the least they know about me, and the least exposed they are to danger, the better. If you take out someone's thralls, you rob them of their daily source of faith, of the faith they gain as a result of pacts, which is a huge blow to a fallen's overall strength, since it limits the number of times they can use evocations and other supernatural abilities before they either reap faith or make new pacts, which is obviously going to take a while. So the awesome factor is huge here, and this evocation is interesting without a doubt, but it's quite limited in use. I can see this synergizing very well with Restore Life, the 5th dot of the Lore of Awakening, since that one creates mindless living bodies that the Scourge can easily inhabit. And make no mistake, I absolutely love the idea of being in multiple places at the same time, acting through an entire group of mortals, which is in perfect sync, beautifully coordinated. But none of that can happen if all of these beautiful, beautiful evocations are limited to thralls only. Let's have a look at the apocalyptic form next. Anshar, the Visage of the Firmament. These angels of the firmament reveal themselves as lithe, ethereal figures with pale skin and large grey eyes. When they speak, their voices echo faintly as if from a great distance, and they alternate between bouts of quiet distraction and periods of intense, disquieting scrutiny. The Visage of the Firmament confers the following special capabilities. Enhanced senses. The character's 5 senses are heightened to superhuman levels, lowering the difficulty of perception rolls by 2. Wings. A pair of owl's wings extend from the character's shoulders. At full extension, each wing is a third again as long as the character is tall. The character can glide up to 3 times her running speed per turn. Enhanced Intuition. The character's uncanny insight lowers the difficulty of all intuition rolls by 2. Enhanced Dodge. The difficulty of all dodge rolls decreases by 2. Torment. Monstrous Anshar seem to retreat even further from the physical realm, shrouded in a disturbing mantle of shadow and mist. Their skin turns an almost translucent gray, and their bodies become bony and emaciated, the skin stretched taut over their faces until they resemble leering skulls. The Visage of the Firmament confers the following Hight-Torment capabilities. Cloak of Shadows. The demon is shrouded in a pall of darkness, making her features difficult to see in the best light and rendering her near invisible at night. The difficulty of all stealth rolls decreases by 2 whenever the demon stands in shadow or moves in darkness. If the character is attacked, the rules for blind fighting apply to the attacker. Multiple eyes. The demon gains 4 to 6 extra eyes sprouting from her head or her neck. These extra organs give the demon 360-degree vision and lower the difficulty of all perception rolls by 2. Improved Initiative. The character adds 2 to her initiative. Claws. The character manifests claws that inflict strength plus 2 aggravated damage. Alright, the descriptions are absolutely gorgeous, and going back to what I was saying earlier, it is precisely because Hight-Torment Anshar grow more distant from the physical realm and increasingly careless and detached from the mortals they once loved, that I think Hight-Torment uses of this lore would be applied without regard for individual life, not just on thralls, but on anyone available and convenient. In low torment form, those of the second house are caring guardians who seek to protect humanity, whereas in high torment they stop caring about anything but their own needs and become an oppressive, paranoia-inducing surveillance organism which acts only on its own interest, to further its own agenda regardless of how many innocents are left blind or crippled in this endeavor. And we can see that low torment powers, such as enhanced senses and enhanced intuition, aid the guardian in doing its duty towards others, while enhanced dodge and wings help keep the guardian itself safe from harm, even though it's probably in the open, it's visible, it doesn't hide. On the other hand, the Hight-Torment powers transform the Scourge into a hidden and quite hideous collection of eyes in the shadows. Something almost cowardly, which doesn't want to reveal itself or be seen, and only breaks its constant surveillance to prey on the weak, to control and ultimately break them. The multiple eyes and improved initiative prevent the character from being caught off guard, while the claws and cloak of shadows allow tormented scourges to ambush and strike from the shadows very effectively. Really, really awesome. So there we have it. The lore of the Firmament, the ability to scry on a living target over any distance, to observe and act through another's body, and even to use evocations from afar, which is a fantastic collection of abilities. It is just bursting with potential, and despite that, it finds limited use in actual play and definitely requires some fine-tuning from the players and the storyteller in order to really bring out its shine. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, have fun, and don't forget to play.